Thanks for tuning in to the Diaphragm Dynasty. I'm back with another exclusive, and today I'll be covering Avant and where should we rank Avant amongst the best male vocalists of his time. So his time frame era was probably around 2000 to around 2008, and around this time he gave us countless hits and gave us a nice run for the time that he had it. And for some reason, a lot of artists, and I'll cover shy in another topic, but for some reason, these artists have this impressive run, and then all of a sudden they just disappear. Now, there's different reasons for those type of things. Now, you have people who just, especially in groups where they get tired of splitting up the money so many ways and not feel like they're not getting enough money and things like that. But then you have creative differences, and then you have those artists who kind of burned their bridges and they don't have any backing anymore. Or they don't have collaborations that they once had and the writing teams and the producers and things like that. And then you just have those artists who just fall off the face of the earth and stop recording. And, sometimes they just get too much money and the love or the hunger is not there anymore. So I'm not sure what Avant's reasoning, for falling off is, maybe because his sound just kind of faded out. And they started going more towards the hip hop sound. So a lot of those R&B sounding artists kind of fizzled out, especially if you wasn't a writer, similar to like The Dream or Teddy Riley and Babyface and guys like that who can always recreate a sound through a younger generation. So as an artist, you always have to evolve to the times and and be able to be diverse as well. Because if you're not an artist anymore, at least you can produce and do things like that. But nevertheless, he did have several hits over several albums. So he wasn't a one hit wonder. He had a lot of impressive hits and a lot of sounds that changed R&B, I believe, during that time period. That are timeless hits as well. But where do we rank him amongst the best male vocalists? Now, I can't put him over those artists that crossed over to household names and have this more impressive catalog. Those artists like Usher, the Tyrese's, the R. Kellys, the Justin Timberlakes, those people have more crossover, more household names, more bigger hits. They have more resources, which is key as well. But there's that next level, that next echelon of artists that you can put him in there with. So those artists, which I rank Avant higher than Carl Thomas, of course, Jaheim, Case, Donnell Jones, Life Jennings, Marcus Houston, and a slew of others. But he's in that second echelon, somewhere between those guys, because the first level, we know what the first tier are. Those are your Ushers, your Neos, the Dreams, all of those guys. But that second level, he's somewhere in between a second and third level of talent that and didn't reach the next level, but was right there. They probably was maybe, one platinum album away. And with him, he had one platinum album and two gold albums, and then the rest of the albums really didn't chart that much. But I believe if he would have had maybe three platinum albums and maybe a little bit of a longer of a run, maybe a 12, 15-year run, maybe that would have put him higher than what he was supposed to be. But for now, that's where I put him. Um, put him up there with he's lesser than Joe Thomas, of course, but the Marios, the Tanks, the Anthony Hamiltons, these guys who had bigger hits and probably had around the same amount of run that he did. Tank is still going because, like I said, he diversified himself as a writer, but unfortunately, Avant didn't have the impact like those other guys I named previously. Those guys had a more impact. Their songs made it to movies, which Avant's one of his songs made it to a movie, I believe. Read Your Mind was on the Coach Carter movie. I don't think it was on the soundtrack, but it was definitely played on the movie. But these other guys just had more impressive runs and made bigger hits and put other bigger hits on other artists as well. So, but Avant was definitely one of those guys who we grew up listening to, in the early 2000s that had a great impact and was a part of the sound that we listened to. Because you couldn't make a R&B soundtrack from 2000 to 2010 without putting at least one of Avant's songs on there. And he had the hits, the songs, the My First Love, which was one of my favorite from him, Separated, Read Your Mind, Don't Take Your Love Away, and then of course he had that song Director, and that was Director was the last time I really listened to a project from Avant because and I said he kind of became underground after that, which is kind of unusual. Usually once you make it to the mainstream, you still try to keep some level of relevancy. But for some reason, like I talked about previously, he kind of fell off the map, I guess, because he went to a different label. That might be an issue as well. So, but nevertheless, these hits were great, and then he also had great appearances um, on songs as well. Bedroom Boom with Yin Yang Twins. If you remember that one, that was a big hit back then. Stick With You with the Pussycat Dolls, which was another pop crossover record that he was able to get on. And then also Karma with Lloyd Banks. That's when Lloyd Banks, I believe his first album that, man, went pretty big time. But he definitely created a sound that these, hip hop artists wanted to be a part of. But what we know him best for, I want to say, is his collaborations with Wyatt. So, and Kiki Wyatt was on My First Love song, and they had a very amazing duet on that. And then also Nothing in This World, which was another duet that they shined on. But they had a great collaboration, and they made great music together. So I always appreciate the music that they were able to put together because they were an amazing duo, and they should have put together an album together. That would have been an amazing sight to see, but for some reason that never came to fruition. But you do have to put Vunt somewhere in that top 10 of the 2000s artists. And that's from 2000 to 2010. He has to be somewhere in that top 10 or just on the fringe of it. But he's very close. But I feel like he was just maybe one major hit away from being up in that upper echelon from those top tier artists. But tell me what your thoughts about Avant and his greatness and where you rank him. And until next time, I'll see you next time.